Once upon a time, there was a woodcutter who lived with his children, Hansel and Gretel, on the outskirts of a dark forest. Times were very hard. The children didn't have any toys and often went to bed hungry. Help Hansel and Gretel's father to build them a treehouse to cheer them up. Touch and move the logs to the cutting block to prepare the wood. Then drag the freshly cut wood to the tree to help them build the treehouse. Wow, what a wonderful treehouse! Let's decorate it! Choose which paint to add and which decorations to use. Thank you so much! We love our new treehouse! One day, the woodcutter ran out of trees to cut down in the forest. How will I buy food if I cannot sell wood? He thought. In desperation, he strayed far from his path, where he found and cut down an enchanted tree, not knowing that it belonged to the forest witch. The witch was very angry and decided to teach him a lesson. She disguised herself as a poor beggar and came to the woodcutter's cottage seeking shelter. The woodcutter was kind-hearted, welcomed her in and shared what little they had with the poor woman. But late at night, Hansel and Gretel heard an evil laugh.
If you take from me, then I'll take from you. For my tree, I'll have Hansel and sweet Gretel too.
The witch was going to lead them so deep into the forest that they wouldn't be able to find their way home. Gretel was frightened, but Hansel said, "I have a plan." He waited until the house was quiet and crept outside. Help Hansel find 5 pebbles that glint in the moonlight. You might find them hidden behind things, so look carefully. Once you find a pebble, pass it to Hansel. One, 2, 3, 4, 5. That should be plenty. Oh, I'm sleepy now. Time for bed. Next morning, when the woodcutter had gone to work, the witch in disguise woke the children.
Time to get up, lazy bones. We are going to the forest to pick berries.
The children dressed hurriedly and followed her out into the cold morning. They walked fast, but Hansel dragged his feet and kept stopping to look back.
What are you doing, child?
Asked the beggar woman. I am saying goodbye to my little white kitten who sits on the rooftop, Hansel replied.
Spongehead! She exclaimed. That's not your kitten. It's the sun's reflection.
Of course, Hansel knew it was just the sun. He was stopping to drop pebbles to mark their path. Hansel must drop 5 shiny pebbles to mark the way home. If the witch sees him, she'll make him pick them up. Tap Hansel to drop a pebble while the witch isn't looking. Great! Now we should be able to find the way home. Deep in the dark woods, they stopped at last. The witch ordered them to build a fire and wait while she searched for berries. Hansel and Gretel obeyed and sat by the fire. They grew drowsy and warm and eventually fell asleep. It was dark when they awoke, and Gretel, who was afraid of the dark, began to cry. "Don't cry," Hansel comforted. "Soon the moon will rise, and I will lead us home." Sure enough, the moon rose, the pebbles gleamed, and the children arrived home to the delight of their worried father. But soon there was no wood again. And again, the woodcutter strayed deep into the forest, where he accidentally cut down another of the witch's trees. The witch howled with fury. This time, she disguised herself as a fair maiden, lost in the forest, and came seeking refuge from the night. The woodcutter gladly obliged, but late that night, Hansel heard a familiar laugh.
Hee 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 hee. I'll take from you if you take from me. This time the children will never get free.
Fearing he and Gretel would be led into the forest again, Hansel crept downstairs to get more pebbles, but found the doors and windows locked shut. Hansel needs to think of a new plan to escape the forest. Scratch his head to help him come up with ideas. Then tap on the ideas to see which one might work. That would work, but we don't have enough rope. A sat-nav would be perfect, but it hasn't been invented yet. Great idea! We can use the bread to leave a trail of breadcrumbs. It was barely dawn when they found themselves in the woods helping the maiden find her way home. They had one piece of dry bread for provisions, and Hansel kept stopping as they went.
What are you doing, Hansel?
Demanded the maiden. "Oh," said Hansel, "I am just saying goodbye to the little dove on the rooftop."
Yellow-belly buffoon!
Shrieked the not-so-fair maiden.
That's just the sun's reflection.
Hansel knew that, of course. He was stopping to drop breadcrumbs to mark their path. Deeper in the forest than is safe for children, the maiden vanished, and Hansel and Gretel were alone again. Hansel and Gretel are freezing and need to make a fire. Drag some twigs to the fireplace. Then drag the flint over the rocks to spark up a fire. What a lovely fire! We'll be warm in no time. They grew drowsy and slept by the warm embers, and in the dark of darkest night, with just a sliver of moon to light their way, they awoke and set out for home. But Hansel's breadcrumbs had long since been gobbled up by greedy birds. In vain, the children tried to find the right path. They walked until the sun came up on a new day, and until that day turned into another night. Their bellies grumbled with hunger, and their legs were weak. After 2 days walking, they came to their fire again. They had been going in circles. Exhausted, they slept, and finally awoke to smell the sweetest aromas of cakes and biscuits in the air. Can you help Hansel and Gretel to follow their noses to where the delicious smells are coming from? Move them left and right to find their way through the forest. It's a life-size gingerbread house! What are we waiting for? Let's eat! Starving and flabbergasted, Hansel and Gretel began to eat the incredible house. As they gobbled the outside, a shaky voice sang from inside.
Nibble, nibble like a mouse. Who is nibbling at my house?
And the children sang back, "Never mind, it is the wind." And Gretel broke off a piece of roof, which was made of every kind of cake you can imagine, while Hansel tucked into the toffee popcorn pebble dash walls.
Who is eating my house?
Asked an old woman appearing from the chocolate door. Hansel and Gretel were stunned, and their mouths were too full to speak.
Never mind, little children,
said the kindly woman.
You must be hungry and tired. Come inside, and I will prepare a feast for you. And when you have feasted to your heart's content, you may go to sleep.
Prepare the exact cupcakes that Hansel and Gretel are thinking about. First choose a cup, then select a base, and finish it off with a topping. We never tasted anything so good in our lives. All was not as it seemed, however. The kindly woman was, in fact, the evil witch in disguise. She had built the house as a trap to catch Hansel and Gretel. Early next morning, her disguise vanished, and the ugly witch dragged Hansel out of bed and locked him in a cage.
As for you,
she said to Gretel,
stop crying and cook for your brother. First, I am going to fatten him up, and then I am going to eat him up.
Gretel had no choice, and so it was that for weeks and weeks, Hansel ate delicacies, while Gretel survived on rotten eggs and potato peelings. Hansel's been eating lots of sweets. Help him to brush his teeth. Move the toothbrush up and down over Hansel's teeth to give them a good clean. Look at that! My smile has never been so dazzling! Every day, the short-sighted witch ordered Hansel to stick out his finger to feel how fat he was becoming. And each day, Hansel would stick out a scrawny chicken bone. Finally, the witch grew tired of waiting for Hansel to get fat and decided to eat him up anyway and to eat his sister for dessert. She ordered Gretel to drag Hansel from his cage. Gretel was very clever. "He is too fat," she called. "I can't get him through the door."
Out of my way,
said the greedy witch, and hopped into the cage to get Hansel out herself. As soon as she was in, Hansel and Gretel jumped out of the way and slammed the door tight. The witch stomped her feet and screamed until the ground shook, but there was no escape for her, and she disappeared in a puff of smoke. The cupboards opened and out spilled more treasure than you could ever imagine. Wow, there's so much treasure! Help sort it into the correct containers. Are you thinking what I'm thinking? Let's bring some home to Father. Hansel and Gretel stuffed their pockets with as many diamonds and rubies and pearls as they could carry before fleeing from the cottage. As they walked through the forest, a path cleared before them, leading them to a big river. On the other side of the river, they could just about make out their father's cottage. "We have no boat," cried Gretel. "How will we get across?" The children called to the ducks on the lake. "Duck, duck, here we stand, Hansel and Gretel on the land. Stepping stones and bridge we lack, carry us over on your nice white back." Help Hansel and Gretel to cross the river one at a time. Tap on a nearby duck or log to move Hansel and Gretel in that direction. Watch out for crocodiles. Thank you, ducks. Come on, Gretel, I'll race you home. They raced to their cottage and knocked on the door. You should have seen their father's face when he saw the two children he thought he had lost forever. He had searched the forest for them every day, but found no trace. He hugged the children, and they emptied their pockets of riches. Though it was just a simple stew, dinner never tasted as good as it did that night. The little family was back together again and lived happily ever after.